next day, going to take another look at this. So the first thing I wanted to point out, I did look up VMA. VMA stands for a valid memory address, and what that means is that the CPU, it takes time to set for the CPU to set its addresses. So it's got 16 bits to set, and they don't set instantaneously. So it takes so many nanoseconds for them all to stabilize. And at that point, then the CPU turns on the VMA, at which point the address is latched in and used across the board. So that signal should not stay at a steady level. It should stay low, go high, go low, go high. So it should be a cycling signal like I originally suspected. So going back to that step, fault on the VMA line, it says to test it and see if it's initially correct and then incorrect. And if it is, go to step F. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and hook up our ground over here. We're going to go on to pin 5, which is our VMA line. We're going to turn it on. And you can see it immediately jumped up and went steady. Let's see if we can narrow this up. So this is what we should see. We're seeing a cycle. It's going down, coming back up, going down, coming back up. So there's time where it's setting an invalid address. Now let's see if this goes bad. Whereas before we had a bad signal at one point. It was running at about 48 kilohertz. So for right now, VMA seems to be good. So we're going to assume that the VMA is correct. Interesting, it doesn't say what to do if it is correct. It says if it's initially correct and then incorrect, go to F. Otherwise, it doesn't say what to do if it's just correct. So we're going to go ahead and step F. It says fault on bus line due A42, symptom 2A. So step on to the next section. First thing it says it could be a fault in the memory bank. At this point it starts getting into simply replacements, which I'm not quite ready to just throw in replacement parts, because a lot of this is very difficult to come by. LH5101 RAM, it's not exactly a off-the-shelf Radio Shack part, if Radio Shack was even still in business. So we're going to look at a few other things. One of the common problems on these is that these sockets are very cheap, very poorly made sockets. So a lot of times, like signals, so our VMA line looks good on the CPU, but maybe it's not good where it goes from the CPU. So let's look at the signal in U9. VMA should be going to test point 7. So let's find test point 7. That's right up here. And it's there. Kind of ugly, but it's there. One of the things, there's also this jumper at the top of the board. This jumper doesn't connect to anything in the system. It's simply a testing rig. You can actually tie that into a testing unit. But a lot of your signals, your data, your address, reset lines, all are routed up here so you can grab them. And that puts us on pin 8 of U19B. So this is kind of where we were testing yesterday. So U19 is down here. So we need to grab the ground. Again, snag it off of one of these capacitors. So pin 8, starting at pin 1 through 7, pin 8. So our signal, VMA signal, is getting to pin 8. Our pin 9 on U19 is showing steady high. So that means our output on U19 should be an opposite of what. So again, we see where it was high, it's now low, where it's low, it's now high. So we got a nice perfect signal coming out of that. So U19 is doing its job. We look back to the circuit. U19B goes from there to an inverter on U14 D, pin 11 and 12. So input is 11. So we go for U14, which is up. 13. Where's U14 hiding? Yeah, there it is down here. Again, I have a very short ground wire. I gotta keep moving it around. This is actually a good thing. Ground wires on your oscilloscope should be short. Get them too long and you're gonna have a bad day. So U14, again 1 through 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And that is the output of our inverter. So my camera decided to run out of storage space, which was a good thing in the end. It actually saved me a little bit of floundering around. So we'll go ahead and turn this back on. Downloaded my card. But where we were is we were looking at the signal coming into U19 and U14. So U19 on port 8 is our signal, and it is there and clean. Port 9 is just simply high, and that means that our output is an inverted of that. Where I was making my mistake was I was glancing at these chips thinking they were the same. U19 is a 14-pin chip. U14 is a 16-pin chip. So I've got 8 pins on either side. So we're looking for our input of U14, which is pin 11. So I've got 8 down one side, 9, 10, 11. And our signal is already going wonky on this. So 9, 10, 11, so there's our input, whether it's right or not. And then there's our inverted output on pin 12. So that goes to pin input 4 on U15, which is, there's 15. So the more I see this, the more I'm beginning to suspect that that 6800 U9 is defective. And this is quite simply because its output is inconsistent, and what we're getting out of the circuit behind it, the read-write circuit, is responding correctly to the inputs that it's getting, but it's not getting good inputs. So at this point, I do believe I need to order and replace that 6800 processor. We'll take a look and possibly see what other chips I can order at the same time to potentially save some shipping, and we will go from there. Okay, well, it's been a few days since I've been working on this, just a screen change for you. However, new 6800 has come in, and we power it on, and we're still seeing the same behavior. The guides, the next steps in the guides are, swap out this chip, swap out this chip, swap out this chip. But one of the things it does mention is bus errors. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and actually look at the buses, the address and the data bus, and see if we're seeing appropriate data on it. Let me grab my pin out real quick for the 6800. So I'm going to grab a couple of things here. One, I have a pinout, 6800 CPU. That just makes it a little bit easier to see what I should be seeing on each port. and of course our schematic, which will be important. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and take a look at our address buses. Address bus starts on A0 is on pin 9. Then it continues up through pin 20 to A11. 21 is skipped, that is the VSS, otherwise known as ground. And then A12 through A15 are on 22 through 25. So we'll take a look at those real quick and see if we're seeing anything odd there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is our address 0. And let's get a little bit of better vertical on here. Yeah. So we can see our vertical. And it kind of looks random, but it's just triggering different signals. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now address 8 here is looking a little weird. So that's something to keep in mind. That's on pin 17. Address 9, completely dead. Address 10, completely dead. Address 11, normal. 12, normal. 13, dead. 14, good. 15, dead. Now 15 I might see, I mean, depends on how much RAM this thing actually needs to address. That may actually always stay low. So that doesn't bother me. The other ones do. Let's also look at our data bus, which happens, data 7 starts on the next pin over, so let's 2, 3, 5. So that is data 7, data 6, data 5, data 4, data 3, data 2. Okay, and here's where we have a problem. Data 2 is blank, and that should never happen. Data 1, always 0. And data 0, nice, kind of weird waveform, but it is active. So what I'm seeing there is that some weird behavior. But so we know that data 1 and 2 were showing dead on the CPU. Let's look at them on another component. Is there actually data on the bus and the CPU doesn't see it? So let's go out down here to, well, let's grab a ROM here. Grab a ground from one of these capacitors over here. So 9316A on U1. So data 0 is on pin 9 of this chip. So this is a 24-pin chip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Data 0, we've got that waveform. Data 1, we've got a waveform. Data 2, we've got a waveform. So what this is telling me, and I suspect we'll see something very similar with the addressing, although hard to say since the CPU is never actually getting to an address, or getting the data, correct data from an address, is that, as I had mentioned earlier, these sockets can be really bad. And I think that's what's happening, is that we're not making good contact in this socket, so we need to replace it and put in a new socket that maybe makes better contact so we'll actually get our data all the way up to the top of the bus. So do a little bit of moving around here, rearranging. Let's see how this works for us. I have never used this before. This is a brand new tool / toy. And we'll see about heating that up. While we're at it, let's take our new CPU out of this socket. Get some flux on this. Alright, soldering iron is, or desoldering iron I should say, is up to temperature. Give it a little bit of that. Maybe a touch of solder on the tip, just so she makes good contact. And we will give this a try. So, we've got a new socket in. I had a trace lift on me, so I had to do a little bodge wire to take its place. Actually, I had a couple of traces left, but one of them was not connected on the front, and that's where it lifted. The back one I needed to have so I could have a connection. It wouldn't obviously can't make a connection on the front if I've got no way to heat up from the back. So we'll put our CPU back in. We'll go ahead and rearrange our soldering here. And hopefully we will get some different behavior. And we don't. So again, let's take a look at our, so this is address 12, 13, is showing something now, 14, 15, showing a little data, data 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We are seeing data across all our pins. That should be. So I apologize, my camera's memory card ran out. So we kind of stopped off. I continued working and didn't realize the card was out yet. Where we ended up, I replaced the socket, I believe, and the system still wasn't booting. Put a new CPU in, still not booting. So where we're at now is I was watching the system and I noticed that some of the data lines were staying high. So again, we'll use our little cheat sheet here and kind of show you what we're talking about. The ground, kick our board on. So data 0 starts at pin 33, 40, 39, 38, 37, 36, 35, 34, 33. So we got a nice little bit of data there. But we notice that data 1 is just locked high. Data 2 is locked high. Data 3 has, kind of looks like data on it, but it's not as... Data 4 is also a little weird. Data 5 is locked high. Data 6 looks strange. And Data 7 looks strange. Then we get into our address buses, which are kind of acting strange as well, but that's very possible. So let's double check, because I've found... Alright, my reset's high. TSC is low, no connection. That's a clock. That's my ground. That's my not halt. That's my clock. That's my IRQ. VMA is looking good. And my NMI signals. So all of those signals look good. So the CPU should be processing at this point. But we've got some reason why the data bus is staying high. So what I did is I started pulling ROM chips, and I pulled U6, and immediately my data bus looked good. So I assumed U6 was bad. However, pull this gently out of here. So we'll go back here to pin 33. There's our... So we look at these and we go, okay, well, now we've got lots of data, lots of noise on these. And I'm even seeing stuff on the address buses. So I thought, okay, U6 is bad. I jumped on the the web and immediately built a cart with some ROMs and was looking at jumper settings. And I thought, well, why don't I just try and test this? Well, these 9316s, they aren't easily readable. I have a little TL866 2 Plus EEPROM reader, but it won't read these 9316s directly, so I built this little cheat sheet. I don't have any 24-pin sockets, so I took a 40-pin, and I went from pin 12 to pin 21. Pin 21 is cut from the bottom side. Actually, I just pushed the pin out of it. And then 18 to 24 are connected. And that just holds the signals in the right position for it to read the ROM. Read the ROM, verified it. ROMs are perfect. All 3 ROMs are completely perfect. So something else is going on causing contention on the bus. But goes away when I take that ROM out. So I printed this out a little bit bigger. So we're going to look at U6. So here's our U6. And one of the things I'm looking for is where chip select is coming from. So it comes out of pin 18, goes up to E35, and then it goes on a jumper. So I need to find E35. Okay, so it goes to 33. That's I was reading that as 35, but 35 is over here. It's going to 33. It's jumpered to 34, which should be the output of U18F. So U18F is our chip select for this. So let's take a look at that. U18. F, which is pin 4 of U18. So let's go ahead and turn this back on. Shift our ground over here. And U18 pin 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got a good chip select signal there. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So our chip select is working. Let's see what else we have on here for this type of ROM. So 18 is our chip enable, 20 is our output enable. So let's take a look at where that one goes. 20 is going up to that bus. Unfortunately, these schematics are so muddled. It makes it very hard to read. It's so difficult to qualify here. So one of the things I want to do is let me see if I can find jumper settings for the 9316s and make sure that this is properly jumpered for those, and maybe just have something that's improperly jumpered causing a bus conflict here. I'm going to go ahead and pause this and go do a little interwebs research and see if I can find said information.